Let me start this with one simple question. Are you addicted to this, or this, or this, or maybe this? What about this? How about this? Okay, maybe not that. Either way, we may have something in common. This is me, wizawhat. And contrary to what it says on this profile, I've been embarrassingly using Twitter since 2014, which, as of this moment, is closing dangerously in on 10 years. As such, I've witnessed firsthand many of the changes the site has received in accordance with the ever-evolving landscape of social media. And to say that Twitter has changed a lot over the last few years in particular would be a bit of an understatement. Back in the day, I latched onto Twitter for the escape it offered me, with its smaller yet still open communities that were really good at connecting people online with shared interests. Fast forward to today, however, we're a shift towards the prioritization of discovery algorithms, endless engagement, and monetization has culminated in a polarizing, toxic culture that rewards dogpiling for internet points and has a bad habit of showing you things that make you sad and angry because it knows doing so will encourage more interaction regardless of the harm it inflicts. This shift isn't fully unique to Twitter, but it has been accelerated and spotlighted within the last few years as a result of a series of erratic changes, eventually reaching a boiling point in which many users were unsure the site would even last more than a few additional months. I can tell you that while the walls of my little online home away from home were beginning to burn down, I secretly and morbidly hoped they would burn all the way, because while my own addiction was constantly getting in my way and the engorging toxicity was becoming a bit too much to bear, I didn't think I had the willpower to walk away from the connections and real good this site has brought me, because there is a lot of good here. Well, Twitter didn't burn down, and I didn't end up walking away, but I did have to do something to change the way I engage with the site. Naturally, I had to adapt, beginning by eliminating key sources of toxicity from my feed. But I felt as though fighting against the system Twitter built by doing all the curating myself was the wrong approach. Instead, I tried playing by its rules, drowning out the negativity by repopulating my feed with as much content that would bring me joy as I could find. So I followed a lot of artists, and doing so led me down an unexpected path that should be a little bit more obvious in hindsight. As it turns out, communities centered around celebrating widely respected properties through fan art overlap quite nicely with discovering new video games, specifically indie games. By completely transforming my feed with a heavy focus on incredible art, I began to sporadically stumble upon in-engine clips of work-in-progress builds for games, the likes of which a secretive AAA developer wouldn't dream of sharing. And it wasn't long before this led to real, valuable experiences I never would have discovered had I not been searching on Twitter, which is exactly why I'm here today. I really enjoy finding the excitement in anticipated games, amassing a list of in-progress titles, trying to build their own momentum on social media while active development continues in the background. I've picked 5 of them to share today. They each have their own story and are trying to do something a little different while still evoking a specific quality that allows you to feel an unquestionable level of care and heart with just a momentary glance. There's absolutely no guarantee any of them will release this year, but my hope is that by getting a few more eyeballs on them, I can instill a little of that excitement in you, and maybe get you to chuck a developer a follow like I have to encourage them to keep pushing. So without further ado, here's 5 cool games I found on Twitter. Not X. First up, The Big Catch. The Big Catch first caught my eye off the back of a retweet at the dawn of its Kickstarter in October of 2022. And judging by the success of its campaign, I think it's safe to say it made quite a strong first impression. It's a faux retro 3D platformer meant to evoke memories from the 5th generation of consoles, with all the hindsight and experiences 2 additional decades of platformer design can offer. But with platformers feeling like such a saturated genre in the indie space, it often takes an additional layer of style and scope to make as much of a splash as this game did. For me, that sense of style became obvious after taking one look at its main character through the cinematic lens of what appears to be an early game cutscene. While cited inspirations include several 3D Mario platformers and even some Zelda games, among others, this project screams early PlayStation vibes to me. From the character designs, animations, even down to the logo itself. After years of regrettable dormancy from some of the most iconic series of that era, The Big Catch feels like an incredibly refreshing and enticing alternative. You play as Castor, tasked with saving his boss's seafood restaurant, The Big Catch, by scouring an open world for fresh ingredients, most notably, fish. For however long, fishing has been a staple mechanic in such a wide variety of genres, from simulations to RPGs to even platformers in a few cases. It's kind of a marvel this angle wasn't fully adapted into a 3D platformer sooner, as all the possibilities for interactions with just a fishing rod is what makes the idea of this game really compelling for me. You can pluck objects out of the ground with a cast and a reel, swing from an object like you would with a grappling hook, and even surf across the sands like a water skier. And while these aspects of gameplay are prominently featured in the trailer, I'm low-key really excited to learn more regarding how this game treats encounters with the main collectibles, the fish, because I think applying that balance of push and pull here will be critical to truly capture the essence of fishing in gameplay. Seeing that Ape Escape is also listed as a key influence, I'm willing to bet there's more than meets the eye to this mechanic. There's a lot of creativity and compelling ideas here, but to be perfectly honest, there's really only one thing I needed to hear with respect to this game's vision to hop on board the hype train without a second thought, and it's proudly plastered at the top of its Kickstarter page. In addition to focusing on exploration and fish, of course, The Big Catch is all about tight, expressive player movement. So much of what I love about the movement systems of Super Mario 64 and Sunshine are represented here. In the way Castor responds to level geometry with context-sensitive actions, like rail grinding, walking across a tightrope, and perching atop unstable ground, reminds me of Sly Cooper in the best way. Developed by Filet Group, a versatile duo which has since expanded to include 4 more level and environmental art designers, The Big Catch is likely the game with the best shot to release this year of the 5 on this list. But it is unclear when that might be, as the team has remained fairly tight-lipped in favor of keeping their noses to the grindstone throughout much of the previous year. In the meantime, you can give their Steam page a wishlist, join their Discord server, and of course, follow their Twitter for all the latest updates posted on their Kickstarter page. Following The Big Catch is a game that more than embodies the idea of discovery through Twitter, and it's called Maple Forest. Maple Forest is a top-down action RPG seeking to evoke memories of the early 90s through a modern lens. I couldn't tell you when it landed on my radar, but I can tell you exactly what drew me to it. Sporting a confident monochromatic pixel art style presented in a 4:3 aspect ratio, I couldn't help but imagine playing this game on a classic Game Boy alongside Link's Awakening. It's a comparison the developer has received a lot, within reason of course, because this game is coincidentally popping up during a time in which a sizable portion of Zelda fans have not only become re-exposed to Link's Awakening through the release of its remake on the Switch, but are also lamenting a perceived loss of the classic Zelda style, captured by almost everything to come before Breath of the Wild. This got me curious about Maple Forest's origin, so I asked. I recently had the privilege of sharing a conversation with the developer of Maple Forest, Natsukaze, and I'm really glad I did because it painted a much clearer picture than what a few eye-catching clips on Twitter really could. Natsu was able to share with me that as far as Zelda goes, Maple Forest actually has more in common with Zelda 1 than it does Link's Awakening, as the monochromatic art style began as a simple practice exercise before taking on the form of a full game. And as far as direct inspiration goes, Maple Forest borrows as much or more from the Soul Blazer trilogy developed by Quintet than it does Zelda in both design and tone. This was really interesting to me, as the SNES era of action RPGs, perhaps best represented in the West by games like Illusion of Gaia and Secret of Mana, regrettably rests in a bit of a blind spot for me, but not without grabbing my interest, making me even more excited to see what Maple Forest really is all about. Regardless of inspiration, however, what's most important is execution, and with just a few clips available at the moment, Maple Forest looks like a game I'd drop everything to dive into right now. I think a lot of that has to do with Natsu's uncompromising vision and commitment to delivering the best game he can for a growing community he's cultivated purely through Twitter up to this point. Natsu is completely on his own here, lacking a professional background in art, sound, programming, and writing. But if I've come to understand anything in just a few short interactions while following the development of Maple Forest, it's that he could have completely fooled me, because what is here already shows so much promise. And the best part is that Maple Forest will be reaching a pivotal moment soon, with a Kickstarter campaign waiting in the wings. As such, the best way to stay in touch with Maple Forest as of this video is to follow its Kickstarter page and its developer, Natsukaze, on Twitter. Okay, for this one, I might be cheating slightly, but I promise it's for good reason. Back in 2022, I stumbled upon my first wholesome games direct, similar to what you'd expect from a Nintendo Direct, or more specifically, Nintendo's Indie World Showcase. The Wholesome Games Direct is a showcase event dedicated purely to highlighting all kinds of projects that share more hopeful qualities, often built with cozy art styles and life-affirming stories in mind. It's a fantastic resource for discovering new games, especially ones that show a lot of promise but are just low profile enough to miss the cut of some of the more widely viewed video game showcases. As this was my first time viewing the event, I was pretty excited, picking up a few great games featured like Frog Gun and Lil Gator Game, on top of adding several more to my radar. But there was one project in particular that spoke to me on a level unlike anything else. Let me introduce you to A Frog's Tale. A Frog's Tale is a turn-based RPG played from a top-down perspective with an unbelievably charming and polished pixel aesthetic. It follows Norman, a young frog setting out on an epic quest to uncover what happened to his father, who mysteriously never returned home after attending this world's annual rejuvenating ritual, subsequently discovering new lands full of rich cultures and new friends just beyond the confines of his own small village, Caro Pond. There are many mechanics and themes present in this trailer that upon viewing for the first time, immediately brought me back to the RPGs that defined my youth, such as its wide cast of adorable partner characters, battle systems sporting timed inputs and fixed encounters, in a world that encourages thoughtful interaction with side quests, platforming challenges, and puzzles to solve in various dungeons and unique settings. With the recent success of games like Bug Fables and Sea of Stars, I think this type of subgenre to the turn-based RPG is currently on the rise, especially in the indie space, filling a void seemingly left by Nintendo and other RPG powerhouse developers that once pioneered the style. But because RPGs as a whole can often dwarf the scope of other genres more prevalent in the indie scene, it can be exceptionally difficult for newcomers without an existing body of work to acquire the talent and resources needed to bring such ambitious projects to life. However, I think there's an extra wrinkle to A Frog's Tale capable of really pushing it over the finish line. Something I can't begin to properly explain without first acknowledging the determination of its creator, A.J. Norman. A.J. Norman is a musician and composer by trade with a knack for great pixel art and not a career game developer. A Frog's Tale is also his first game, an incredibly ambitious undertaking to say the least. But after learning more about his journey to this point, I've come to believe heavily in the success of his project, should he continue to find the resources needed to see it through to completion. As a first-time developer without the aforementioned previous works to support A Frog's Tale, development of the game began with an unconventional path towards a very successful Kickstarter campaign of its own. If I learned anything of utmost importance related to indie game Kickstarters after my recent dive into the campaign supporting Sea of Stars, it's that for many projects as ambitious as these, the initial funds raised rarely come close to funding the full scope of development, instead fueling the early stages while acting as a living proof of demand to serve negotiations with indie publishers. And so AJ, well researched and aware of his unique position, crafted a plan with a highly transparent approach. He would ask for a more modest amount of funds than what A Frog's Tale really needs, while foregoing any physical rewards to put his full focus into delivering the best pitchable demo possible, surrounding himself with a small team of industry veterans to help bring his vision to life. A vision centered upon his musical expertise. This is what I think really sets A Frog's Tale apart. Aside from having a fantastic standalone soundtrack, A Frog's Tale uniquely facilitates rhythmic play in both its combat and exploration, using dynamic sound to deal timed input attacks, solve puzzles, and hop through the environment to the beat of the music. It's genius. And with this unique idea, Norman and his team were able to substantially exceed their funding goal, delivering on their promise of creating a playable demo for publishers and Kickstarter backers. That was about a year ago, which begs the question, what's happening with A Frog's Tale now? Well, I got to speak with AJ, and while he explained progress has slowed down, he assured me he's doing everything he can in order to complete this game the way it deserves, spending much of the previous year searching for the right partner, which has unfortunately proven to be challenging given the state of the industry. The reality is, publishers already want studios to make as much progress as they can on their own before committing to a project in need of support. And in 2024, they're taking less risks than they used to, which has led the team behind A Frog's Tale to have to reconsider all their options. It's an incredibly tough position to be in, and with such a special game on the line, someone really needs to just give this team the bag and let them do what they do best. For now, however, the best thing fans can do is continue to wait patiently and spread the word of this game. I'm optimistic because I know AJ is headed into the rest of 2024 with an optimistic plan of his own, with more communication regarding how they intend to move forward coming soon on all social channels for A Frog's Tale. Do you like SimCity? What about the timeless, isometric art style of games like Transport Tycoon and Roller Coaster Tycoon? Then I think I've got a pretty cool little game for you. This is Metropolis 1998. Developed by Yesbox, another one-man operation, Metropolis 1998 seeks to offer a fresh take on the city builder simulation with all the 90s nostalgia this gorgeous type of isometric style can offer. To be completely honest, the only city builder game I've ever played is the SNES release of the original SimCity, but even that was enough to get a decent understanding of the core appeal. What I have played an ungodly amount of dating all the way back to the late 90s is Roller Coaster Tycoon. So you can probably imagine the kind of emotions I was feeling when this game randomly popped up on my Twitter timeline. From what I've been able to gather, Metropolis 1998 began development in late 2021 and has been making steady progress since. In fact, the reason I really wanted to highlight it here is because right at the tail end of 2023, Metropolis saw the release of its first pre-alpha demo. It's more of a sandbox than anything right now, lacking most of the simulation aspects one can expect in its first commercial release version. But I do believe there is something special here, because in just this demo, I still lost myself in the creativity fostered by even its most basic zoning and building tools. You can get down to the real nitty-gritty, building homes completely from scratch, beginning with zoning, followed by the core build, and even furnishing. And this extends to not just home design, but any of the businesses, government buildings, and infrastructure one should expect from a full city simulation. It really feels like a blank canvas, but the best part is how nicely the building mechanics will be scaled within the simulation. Once you've settled upon a core design, you can save it as a blueprint, copy and pasting to your heart's content. And the blueprint mechanic even seems to randomize the exterior and interior decor upon placing to add just enough visual variety. Where marketing for most city and civilization sims seem to begin with what is typically the end goal, I find myself drawn to this game for its conversely more homely and smaller scale town vibes. I don't know how well it will stand out to players more familiar with the city builder genre, but I am confident it has the potential to ease players like me, more heavily drawn to the more precise design aspects of games like The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon, into whatever it has cooking. What is absolutely true right now is that Metropolis 1998 benefits heavily from its creator's transparent design process, as Yesbox is frequently sharing progress updates on Twitter that not only detail new features, but also demonstrate how far the building tools can be pushed, jogging my own creativity. This one is probably pretty far out from its early access release, which I know is also a bit of a deal breaker for some people, as it often is for me. But there's something about the vision of Metropolis 1998 and its creator's energy for sharing frequent updates, as well as seeking real feedback from its small but growing community, that leaves me feeling more than compelled to jump in at the ground floor and become part of the ride, whenever that may be. For now, give that Steam page a wishlist and check out Yesbox's Discord and Twitter for regular updates if you're just as interested as I am. That just leaves what is last, but certainly not least, on my list. It might be the game with the toughest chance to really stand out from the pack, but is also the best representation of why I really wanted to make this video, and as such, requires a bit of a lead-in. This is Dono's Tale. Last year, I played Yoshi's Island for the first time. Having only experienced some of the more recent Yoshi platformers, with the understanding that Yoshi's Island is most commonly considered the best in its series, I went in with a bit of honest skepticism. It wasn't long, however, before Yoshi's Island began to demonstrate why it is so highly regarded through not just its extraordinary style as I had anticipated, but its excellent implementation of challenging and rewarding gameplay. Following Yoshi's Island's release, the emerging series evolved to fill a different niche in Nintendo's vault by leaning away from its difficulty and more into new, similarly awe-inspiring art styles, perhaps to avoid overlapping too heavily with some of Nintendo's other challenging platformer series. I don't believe there's anything wrong with that, but I have since gained a better understanding of the hole this left behind, as the series quickly pivoted in a different direction, leaving a ripe opportunity for a new, passionate developer to fill. I personally place a lot of value in a game's ability to subvert my expectations, and an often really fun way to do so is to take the Yoshi's Island approach, contrasting cutesy, inviting visuals with uniquely demanding mechanics and design. That's partially why I was so excited to discover Dono's Tale, because while it could easily be mistaken as just another light and cute mascot platformer to add to the indie pile, its trailer alone conveyed a deep desire to deliver a new game with the potential to not only recapture that missing element of the classic Yoshi's Island experience, but to stand on its shoulders, pulling influence from several other notable platformers to create the ultimate, unbelievably cute, and incredibly skilled subversion. It also had a demo available. My first instinct was to hop straight into the demo without considering what exactly I was getting into. And while I saw the potential, I also couldn't help but feel some frustration. That's because Dono's Tale attempts a small yet bold design choice I can't recall seeing in another 2D platformer, and maybe for good reason. Dono's Tale is a pretty quickly paced course clear game in the same vein of Super Mario Bros., Sonic, DKC, and of course Yoshi's Island. But instead of implementing power-ups in the more traditional and temporary sense like those games do, Dono's Tale introduces the player to a new permanent ability at the start of each world. It's not out of the ordinary for other 2D platformers to include unlockable abilities and upgrades the player can cycle between or access in a menu. But in the type of game where true mastery is often rewarded with a pristine sense of flow, I'm not convinced there's a clear solution making numerous abilities both fluid to switch between and highly synergistic. This is where Dono's Tale attempts to shake things up by having 2 simultaneously active abilities bound to different face buttons. There's 3 combat abilities and 3 movement abilities that can be cycled through using the shoulder buttons and triggers respectively. And I think by splitting them into 2 categories, the idea is to enable cycling to the correct ability using as few inputs as possible. While it's definitely a step in the right direction, it's also where a lot of my initial frustration stemmed from. Since the demo grants access to all abilities from the get-go, I felt a little overwhelmed and didn't fully consider how switching on the fly could be a skill of its own, gradually learned over the course of a first playthrough. And from what I could gather, I think other players felt this way too, citing the ability cycling as a key area of frustration. Because it does feel bad to accidentally switch to a dash that sends you plummeting into a bottomless pit when your intention was to activate a wall climb or flutter jump. But here's the thing. While we, as players, are most often judging games from our own limited perspective, there's usually a good reason for decisions like these that present an easy target for criticism. So I spoke to Dono's lead developer, Dagoberto Duarte, to get a better understanding of the reasoning behind that decision. And what I learned was pretty interesting. While Dono's Tale is meant to offer free-form, fast-paced gameplay for its most adept players, it's also attempting to craft a timeless experience that can be cherished by a wide variety of audiences for years to come. And with that comes some compromises in the control scheme. In Dago's local testing, he noticed younger players really struggled to execute actions using multiple buttons at once. And so by utilizing ability cycling, he could meet all players somewhere in the middle with a system that adjusts to their skill level. While inexperienced players will be more likely to stop and analyze the current situation before cycling to the correct ability to execute their plan, those who are more familiar with other systems can unlock the full effectiveness of their abilities with a bit of practice. And I'm telling you, once you do, this game feels incredible. There's small considerations for maintaining flow as well as outright explosive movement possibilities in just this demo, in the abilities, in the core movement, and the level design, evoking the same rush of focus and adrenaline I received after cracking open the skill ceiling of Pizza Tower last year, a surprise hit that quickly became an enormous success. So, what gives? Why does it feel like nobody else is talking about this game? Interestingly enough, I discovered Dono's Tale through Twitter long after it made its debut on Kickstarter. Its campaign, however, was unsuccessful. In my talk with Dago, I learned that Dono's Tale suffered many of the pitfalls associated with a lack of widespread outreach. On Kickstarter, you really need money to make money. You can have a great page, a great pitch, a great demo even, which all take time and resources of their own, but having all of that still isn't enough if you lack a portfolio of commercial works or the outreach needed to find a brand new audience. The fact that a number of people, even within Dono's existing community, were not able to help contribute to the campaign because they weren't notified resonated with me. Because I would have loved to help if I didn't discover this game a year too late. After all, I only found it because I was inadvertently searching deeply for it in an attempt to change my own social media habits, which I think brings up an interesting point. You may be asking yourself, Wizzy, everyone makes lists of anticipated games. Why not focus on upcoming projects slated for this year you're excited for, instead of games so early in development there's a real chance they may never even see completion? And trust me, I want to give those games the attention they deserve as well. But as far as granting even a little visibility to games that still have a long way to go and could really use all the help they can get, That's exactly the point of this. Great games are continuing to release well into 2024, likely due to the boom of investment the industry saw following 2020. But it's something we're beginning to pay for now. And I don't think we've seen the last of the industry's struggles with respect to layoffs and the swelling dissatisfaction in the AAA market. There are a lot of complicated economics at play, and given some time and with the right changes, the industry as a whole could completely bounce back. But I still can't help but think about the potentially great games in need of help or are just getting their start, and how there's a growing sentiment that publishers who would have supported them in the past are taking way less risks right now. As a result, we run the risk of losing budding talent and interesting projects in the shuffle. However, what has been reaffirmed to me in this is that social media is a powerful tool for connecting new audiences with these works and the awesome people that are trying to deliver them to you. I started this simply by seeking out cool artwork and clips to transform my social feeds so I could feel a little bit better while scrolling. But I had no idea how many passion projects I would discover along with the exceptional stories and individuals bringing them to life. By changing my social media habits instead of maintaining the status quo or abandoning these platforms entirely, I feel like I'm breaking into a community I've hoped to be a part of all along. One where we can all have a real impact by engaging more actively instead of passively consuming, while assuming everything will work itself out on its own in the background. Dagoberto is on an interesting path of his own. After his Kickstarter failed in 2022, he continued pitching Dono's tale to publishers before receiving a different kind of opportunity, taking up a designer role on a contract for a AAA project, which did leave Dono's tale on the back burner for some time as he began to adjust to the new job. Unfortunately, he was also laid off late last year, but that's also given him the push to make more active progress on his passion project. In Dono's absence following Kickstarter, Dago basically rebuilt the entire game from scratch, keeping the assets while greatly revising the systems and code to facilitate better collisions and hit detection, not to mention the graphical enhancements he's been able to take full advantage of to refresh old levels with the skills he's developed crafting new ones. There's even all new sound design, bringing old levels and animations to life in a new way. It's all coming together really nicely, with Dago posting clips almost every week for some time. And that actually makes this a pretty good time to be interested in Dono's tale, because Dago is getting ready to give this another shot, beginning the preparations for a new Kickstarter using everything he's learned from his previous experience, which you can follow right now by following through to the new page. I know I will, because after spending hours grinding out time trials in the few levels that are currently available, I really want to see this game finished. I've even been told a new demo is soon to follow, one I'm really eager to play. It's been a pleasure getting to learn more about all of these games, beginning with just a fresh mindset and a few first impressions. And even if my selection doesn't capture you to the same degree it did for me, there is a sea full of great projects waiting to be connected with you. So join me, and let's keep searching. They say don't call it a series until there's two, and I have an ever-expanding list of games here, so if you like this video and want to see more like it, please let me know in the comments. But also let me know what projects you're excited for, so maybe I can discover something new. Big thank you to Natsukaze, AJ Norman, and Dagoberto Duarte for sharing their time with me as I learned a lot. And links to all of the games and their social pages can be found in the description, including mine. You should chuck me a follow too while you're there. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons for funding videos like these, including my strongest supporters, Julian Messmer, Questing Refuge, and Blacktooth Bob. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.